Tonight we are here to hear from 3 leaders as we highlight Unleashing Catalytic Leadership. Each of them has been an agent of change at SV2 in their own philanthropic leadership. So join me in welcoming 3 SV2 stars. First, Ted Janus, who is, please join me up here, a founding partner, a past board member, and also a recipient of the Laura Arriaga Andreessen Award. Laura Lauder, SV2 founding partner and current board member as an executive committee member and Laura Arriaga Andreessen Award winner. And then also Lisa Sobrato Sonsini, an SV2 partner and a current investment review committee member, keeping us all on track financially. Thank you. Each of you in your program have a full bio for all of these 3 incredible leaders. I would encourage you to read it later this evening. In the meantime, catalytic leadership and catalytic philanthropy. The Stanford Social Innovation Review published the first article on catalytic philanthropy written by Mark Kramer, and it noted 4 elements for catalytic leadership in the philanthropic ecosystem. They noted that taking responsibility for achieving results, in other words, developing a strategy, having measurable goals, tactics, and success indicators, something all of you are familiar with. Mobilizing for change to heighten awareness and coordinate separate efforts. 3, using all tools available, financial tools, legislative tools, technology, for example. And 4, creating actionable knowledge, gathering knowledge, and then using that knowledge to inform our decision-making and actions, and also to motivate others. This, in fact, sounds a lot like SV2. In fact, our 16 years of catalytic leadership accelerating social change is legendary, thanks to our guests on stage and to our founder, Laura Arriaga Andreessen. In Laura's recent SSIR article, Giving 2.0, Getting Together to Give, Laura noted that our pooled funds provide multi-year organizational capacity building grants to nonprofits, helping these organizations build up their infrastructure to operate effectively and efficiently. And then, through organizational capacity and continuous learning, they innovate and continuously grow. So SV2 support has indeed been catalytic. By using our venture philanthropy model, we create a catalytic effect to leverage our human capital, our intellectual capital, and our financial capital, with all of our grantees and community partners, as we all aim to scale and accelerate impact. So, now on to the business at hand. Let's start with some questions for these wonderful panelists. We're going to start with Ted on my left here. So this question is really for all of you in some way, but we'll start with Ted. What attracted you to SV2 initially?
It was initially the very persuasive powers of Laura Arriaga. She approached me when I was a very young guy of only 41 years old, and I thought that philanthropy was going to be something I'd do 20, 25 years in the future, and I said I just did not have time to get involved with SV2. Laura came back to me and said, you've got to join, you've got to join. I said, no, no, no. Next thing I know, I'm a member of SV2, then I'm a board member of SV2, then I'm vice chairman of SV2. I'm doing more philanthropy than I ever imagined possible, and it was good for me.
That's great. We are glad that it was good for you. Now, Laura, tell us, how did that unfold for you?
So I also was approached by what we very sweetly call her LAA, Laura Arriaga Andreessen, who was at that time an amazing redhead who was, as you know, as passionate could be, and still stays that way even as a new mother. What I found was an opportunity to really scale up impact so that you could find ways to be involved hands-on in the community and to learn about so many different organizations. And so that's what drew me to SV2 in the early days. And I was one of the early partners and was also on the board at a very early age and just loved it, and then got back involved much later.
That's great. And did SV2 actually help you improve the effectiveness of your philanthropy?
Well, we'll get to that in your next question.
All right, we will. Lisa, tell us how you came to SV2. You're a more recent joiner.
Well, yes and no. Maybe I ebb and flow, but I actually was privileged to hear about Laura's business plan when it was actually still in a business plan mode. So way back when more than the 16 years of SV2's history, which dates me, but she had presented to Peter Hero at the Community Foundation, which was then the Community Foundation Silicon Valley, his CEO. And I had came in like 2 days later to meet with Peter talking about leaving my law practice to start a family foundation. And he said, wow, well, you really need to meet with Laura. Laura needs to meet with you. You guys need to share. You know, she would be a great role model and peer as you guys are working through these things. So that's how it originally started. And so then when we did get together, Laura said, you know, please, again, how do you say no to Laura? Please be on the founding board. And from there, it was great because it was a perfect time for me to be surrounded by some very, very high quality leaders like Steve Kirsch and Jeff Skoll and others that were on the founding board just to really learn and to help guide me and to really be mentors as we were dealing with a lot of the same issues in our initial conception.
Great, thank you. And why do you stay?
Why do I stay? Because Laura keeps asking. No, it's it's very hard to say no. No, it's great, you know, to see the transition. I mean, again, having been involved very early on, and then actually seeing SV2 become its own actual organization apart from the Community Foundation, and to see how the leadership has really transitioned to really be a partner-driven and led organization, and that's really kept me around.
That's great. That's great. So, Lisa, let's continue that line of thought. What have you learned from that journey, and how are you applying that to your philanthropy today?
The biggest lesson I think I've learned is that I know less than I think I know, and I keep learning more and more every day. And I think the biggest lesson that I've been learning, when we first started our grant making with the foundation, it was very project driven and very tangible. It was all around our individual and our family passions. We could count, you know, what we were doing. We could measure what we were doing. But then it became clear that we really had no clue what impact we were having. It felt really good, and we were very engaged. But it was hard to say, you know, how we were really moving the needle on anything. So we started listening to our grantees and having them tell us, well, what we really need from you is general operating support, not these little project support grants that you've been giving us over time. And that was a real transition for us because we, those that know our family, we really like to control things, and to actually give up control to a nonprofit agency to say, you actually know better than we do on how to spend your money and that we give you, and that you'll actually do a much better job with it. So that transitioned us, and we've just kept learning and listening and changing as we've gone. And I think the biggest lesson learned has, for me personally, and I'm still learning it, is as we've become more and more driven by results and measurement and impact, which was really our goal from the beginning in terms of changing our focus, and again, what we've learned a lot through SV2 in terms of really measuring our effectiveness, how do we marry that and keep the passion and the engagement and the inspiration that we had when we were able to really touch and feel and see each and every little thing that we did. So we're learning as we go.
Great. So Laura, let's continue on that. How has SV2 helped you improve the effectiveness of your philanthropy? And I would even take it a step further and ask you how you've moved from bold to audacious to catalytic.
So giving circles have been around for a long time. SV2 is a traditional giving circle in the classic sense. But what SV2 does on steroids is partner-powered philanthropy. And so what happened for us is that we implemented this in 3 different ways through our family foundation. First with our kids, one of whom is here tonight, Josh. Second, through the Jewish community, where I'm very involved at the teen level, and third, through, again, the Jewish community at the adult level. And what I found was that the SV2 model of really very focused strategic philanthropy, led by partners, led by lay people, instead of staff, you'll see that SV2 is not staff-driven. It is very much of a lay-driven organization, and that's an anomaly in many of these giving circles. This organization empowered me to bring this concept to both our family foundation, to teens, where we're rolling out teen philanthropy across the country, and even brought it here to SV2, and now bringing it to Sydney, Australia, Toronto, Canada, Los Angeles, San Diego, Detroit, Michigan, Miami, Florida, Boston, Massachusetts, Cape Town, South Africa, bringing teen-led giving circles like SV2 to all these communities. And then finally, the idea of, in the Jewish community, I'm the vice chair of the Jewish Community Endowment Fund, and we have close to $2 billion under management with a very sizable unrestricted fund. And so what we've done is created giving circles like SV2, where partners are empowered to help allocate, make decisions on the distribution of those funds. It has been literally catalytic, and we have far more people involved and engaged, like all of you, as a result of this really self-empowered approach of the giving circle. So SV2 has been really monumental in our philanthropy.
Wonderful, thank you for that, and it really fits in with the article that Laura had written, so how beautifully timed. Also, for all of you, Laura is one of our best ambassadors. She serves not only when she's talking about all of those cities where they've taken the teen model, she also serves on 15 other boards, and I have to tell you, is constantly talking about the effectiveness of this partner model in SV2. So thank you, Laura. Now on to Ted. Tell us how SV2 has helped you think about the effectiveness of your philanthropy.
Sure. When I was introduced to SV2, a lot of my philanthropy consisted of just friends reaching out to me with their favorite project that they wanted me to get involved in, just writing checks, but not really thinking a lot about it, not being strategic. SV2 really taught me how to be strategic, and I want to fast forward to what my wife and I are doing today. I think everybody here, or most people here, probably have a family budget, right? You sit down at the beginning of the year, the end of the year, you look how your family budget's going. Well, we've adopted a philanthropic budget. We sit down in the very beginning of the year in January and map out exactly what we want to accomplish philanthropically for the year, what organizations we're going to give to, where we're going to put our time, and that's very, very helpful. And that really stems from my involvement here at SV2 with being very strategic about what I was doing. Also, just the whole network here of SV2, sharing best practices, how to conduct research, and also being motivated by inspiring people like these two, and being inspired by people like Nancy with that wonderful speech.
So you said at the beginning there was a little bit of just people asking. As we all know, friends give to friends. People give to people. And so that's one way to think about giving. And did that lead you always on to success? Have you found some challenges or failures along the way?
There have been some challenges. I'm going to give you two challenges. How's that? I'll even add on a mistake I made. That's good. I'm in the investment business, so I make lots and lots of mistakes. That's how you learn. But I'm going to talk about challenges. One of the challenges is you start becoming known for philanthropy. It's amazing how people reach out from the past. Like, you've got people reaching out from high school. You've got people reaching out from college with this amazing nonprofit that they're starting, that they're funding. And boy, you've got to put your money in this one. I'm going to get back to what I was saying about what my wife and I have done, starting off with just a philanthropic budget and where we're going to put our time. We're nice people. We want to be optimistic. We want to help out everybody. But realistically, you cannot do that. And the secret to being a good philanthropist is as much as the secret of being a good investor. You need to be focused. And a polite way of saying that, boy, that project's great, but our focus is really here. We limit our focus to a few organizations with time and money each year. And then now, if you'd like to hear a mistake, and I guess we got 3 minutes for my mistake. I'll make it fast. I'm going to keep this very, very high level because I'll tell you how the mistake unfolded. It was a few years back. It was a busy time in my life professionally. I was working very, very hard. And somebody fairly influential, somebody if I asked for a show of hands, I bet you 80% of the hands would go up saying, I know who this person is. Well, they called me and they said, boy, Ted, I would really like you to write a check. And it wasn't a little check, it was actually a big check to an organization that I'm spending a lot of time on. And the organization was actually fairly prestigious, and people probably recognize that name too, but again, I'm keeping it high level. And I thought, wow, I'm so busy, and this gentleman said, I'd like you to write the check next week. And I wrote the check. And that got kind of away a couple lessons I learned at SV2 that I didn't really follow. One is that you should really do a lot of research when you write a check, right? What is this organization about? I didn't really do research. I was in a rush. It wasn't part of my plan. Violated a lot of SV2 rules. And it did not end very well because I checked back a year later, and amazingly enough, they were not using this money I'd given in the way they said they were going to use it. And the executive director was not all that polite about it. And what am I going to do? I'm going to get into a fight with an executive director of a nonprofit? No, I had to learn from that. But again, the learning, getting back to SV2, have a plan, do your own research, be independent, and really own it when you write a check. So that's what I learned. And that was a mistake.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we've all made mistakes along the way on many parts of our lives and in our journey. But we also have all of those successes. And I think what we see here with the wonderful grantees that we have in the audience, that we have done a lot of this due diligence. We go through the organizational capacity assessment. We participate in a grant-making round. We take the time to do that. And now we have these new lightning rounds where we're learning how to do that in a different type of a model, but hopefully with the same effectiveness. Now, with that in mind, Laura, what happens when you really think big?
So one of the things that SV2 gave me was, as I mentioned, this network of not just partners, but also nonprofits. Because when you serve on a grant round, you really go deep into learning and understanding the whole landscape of the nonprofits in that sector. And so I learned a lot about the nonprofits in this community, and especially in San Jose as a city. And one of the things I learned a lot about was City Year. So City Year is an AmeriCorps grantee. I also happen to serve on the board of the Aspen Institute, which is an organization, a tank of thinkers, we like to call it, out of Washington, D.C. And they were interested in getting involved in service, community service, particularly year-long service, in a way that would really catalyze young people to serve their country for a year, sometime between 18 and 28. As a result of my involvement in SV2 and my association here in Silicon Valley, and in particular in San Jose, and through some of you, and you know who you are, I was introduced to Sam Liccardo, the new mayor of San Jose. And now, as a result of this amazing network, we're going to bring this idea of a service year to the city of San Jose, and we're looking to partner with all of the nonprofits in San Jose to make sure that thousands of young people in San Jose could serve in San Jose, their country, their city, and being a great citizen. And it was all initiated as a result of this organization. So I'm so appreciative.
That's great. So Lisa and Ted, do either of you care to comment on what happens when you really think big? You did a really wonderful true confession without divulging. So if you really want to think big, what would you be sharing?
When I think big, I tap into the idealism that I had in high school, in college. Everybody here is idealistic. That's why you're in the room. You all want to make the community a better place. You want to make the world a better place. So tapping into that idealism, but building onto it with the pragmatism and the experience of age, and then bringing in this wonderful network of people and organizations. That, to me, is what thinking big is.
Thank you. Lisa.
When I think big, I get really, really excited and then really, really tired because I get all these great ideas and then can never do everything I want to do. But, you know, I guess just to answer the question maybe from a different angle, not so much of something that, you know, I've actually done, but more just kind of the mindset of what can be accomplished when you think big. And I think, you know, we're only limited by what we think is possible. And I know, as we get older, we become more and more, I don't know if it's being jaded or, we limit our own selves in terms of our thinking, in terms of what we think we can achieve. That growth mindset that they talk about in school, doesn't really exist in our own minds. And I think about, my kids, and it's like amazing to think, when you ask them to think big, they don't think about like what could possibly happen that's negative. They're all about everything just somehow magically goes along their path, and these things are all open and everything's hunky-dory. And it may not be reality, but I think if we actually could all have that mindset of actually possibility and keeping going, whether it be teachers in classrooms to think about the possibility of each and every, I get choked up when I think about teachers not seeing the possibility of each and every student in the classroom being able to achieve, being able to go to college, and what happens when you don't have that mindset of thinking and believing in others. So I guess just to just know that we all can, should, and will be thinking big and thinking about the possibility in everybody.
So some cross-sector, working with government, idealism, and thinking about everyone being able to live out their dream. So with that, we'd like to open it up and allow you to ask a few questions. We don't have a lot of time, but we certainly have time for a few questions if there are any from the audience that you'd like to ask. All of them? Any specific person?
Come on, you all.
Anyone out there?
Someone
Going
got a
once,
question.
going twice.
Okay, here we go.
Hi, my name's Camille from Somos Mayfair. I guess one of my questions is around how do you bring this mindset of philanthropy to communities that may have a newer relationship to money and not know how to even get involved? Because that's something I'm trying to figure out more in our immigrant communities where people are starting to make more money and rather than sending it back home where their families are still from, but investing it here in their own communities. What kind of advice would you give to that?
Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I'll just start and say, it starts with giving time. It starts with creating opportunities that are warm and welcoming, where especially families can come and help, especially by invitation. So once you're engaged, especially through your children, it somehow becomes part of you. You take ownership of it, and you want to see it grow and thrive. And then the leadership needs to just ask, because often people don't give until they're asked, and when they're asked, they do step up. It doesn't have to be large numbers. Small grants, especially at the beginning.
Well said.
I would add to that you can really lead by example, and it's way beyond money. I can remember way back in the 70s in Oregon, where I was going to high school, and it was a particularly difficult economic time in the late 70s in Oregon. A lot of people were really challenged by that, and we ended up doing a lot of work at my high school for the homeless. That's how I got the philanthropic bug, was early through this high school. None of us had money. We weren't giving money, we were giving time to an organization in Portland, Oregon. So again, it can be time, and you can lead by example.
I'll just add to that also that our whole model is human capital, intellectual capital, and financial capital, and that's what beyond the dollars is all about. So I think everything you're hearing here really contributes to that. But also just in terms of our own social responsibility in Silicon Valley, we all have the incredible delight of living here. But we also are seeing many problems here with income inequality. So as we enjoy the privilege of living here, and for example, one of our projects this year, the Big Lift, is working in San Mateo County, where only 50% of the children are achieving third grade reading level. So that in itself says there's a need here, and while we can send our money other places, and there's nothing wrong with that, that as we're doing that and thinking about how we're coming up with our philanthropic budget, as Ted was describing, seeing to it that we're also including our backyard and down the street or whatever that might be, putting that somehow into our mindset, because it is a privilege to live here, and how can we contribute back in that way. So that, I would also add that. Yes, I see another question here. Janet. We'll grab the mic.
Quick question. In your roles, what keeps you up at night?
So could you all hear that question?
What keeps you up at night in your roles? Well, you can also talk about other things, but.
My 3-year-old and my 1-year-old. But my wife here is a saint.
I mean, I guess it's literal, but also on a bigger scale. You know, it's this never-ending to-do list that people joke me about that's now, like, I think got 400 things on it. You know, but it's that feeling you can never do enough. That's it.
Yeah, and I would answer by saying there's a risk versus impact trade-off. I find that sometimes if you don't take enough risk, you're not going to have a lot of impact. So the risk often keeps you up at night. So then the question becomes, how much do you need to sleep?
We're super motivated in this department. My wife is a social entrepreneur and teaches at Stanford on the subject, and we're always doing something. It was amazing when we first met. The first substantive conversation I had with Kathleen was about philanthropy. Besides, of course, telling her how beautiful she is. But it's really part of our relationship. It's part of our life. It's what we're going to train teach our kids. And we're doing all we can.
Yes, Lisa. Right there. Mike. Perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Lisa Nash, Executive Director of Blue Planet Network, a very proud grantee of SV2, and on behalf of all the grantees tonight, who I'm so happy to see, part of SV2's new strategic plan is really to double down on supporting the grantees. So what does that mean to each one of you?
Anyone want to jump in, or? Well, I'll start and help you out there. As a current board member, and I know Laura and I have both been sort of in that role, I think for me the doubling down means that as we provide expertise and the beyond the dollars, if you will, that we actually do that with the right skills and expertise, that we're matching individuals to work with the grantees in a way that they can contribute, and that they're bringing that type of expertise to the table that's most meaningful to your organization. So for us, understanding what your needs are, and then providing both the dollars, but also if it's marketing or technology, it might be two different kinds of needs that you have. How do we do the appropriate matching? So I think it's doubling down not only in terms of the dollars, but it's doubling down in terms of the beyond the dollars. So that's what it means to me. Anybody else care to jump in? All right. Yes, Emily.
Thanks. I'm Emily Arnold Fernandez. I'm the Executive Director of Asylum Access. So we are an international grant round grantee. And I'm curious about this question, both as the Director of Asylum Access and also as someone who's developing my own philanthropy. So from both sides, it's kind of the flip side to the first question that was asked. One of the things we hear from particularly family foundations and philanthropists who don't have a whole foundation program staff backing them is that it's hard to know how to invest internationally, how to invest when you can't easily go and see the impact you're having or the programs that you'd like to consider investing in. So I'm curious, for those of you who have done international grant making, what can we as an international organization do to make it easier for you, to help you have the information you need? And then I'm curious, as someone who's developing my own philanthropy, how can I think about investing internationally? What are your tips for me as a fellow philanthropist about identifying the right organizations when they're not here in our own backyard?
Great question. Thank you, Emily. And then
I'll start, and the others can chip in. I've been investing internationally for a long time, and I think that it is extremely rare in America to give internationally. I think something on the order of single digits as a total percentage of giving goes internationally. In fact, low single digits. So it's scary. It's scary for people because, of course, there's absolutely no accountability, hands-on opportunity, et cetera. So what I have found through giving to Global Fund for Women, Global Fund for Children, through organizations that support Israel, is that for me, when the organizations have travel opportunities, I take advantage of those every time. I've been to Honduras. I've, of course, been multiple times to Israel. I've been all over. And that enables me as a donor to do that. So I would encourage the nonprofits that are working internationally to try to find ways for donors to go on trips that aren't too expensive, because some of these developing countries, it is so inexpensive. And you can use miles, and you can have miles banks so that you can provide donors with free airline miles, et cetera. So seeing is believing, and the trips really have huge impact. So that would be my advice.
Either of you care to jump in? Just reaffirming what Laura said, only about 2% of the philanthropic dollars out of the total $335 billion in 2013 were spent internationally. So it is a low percent, but your dollars can go very far. So I think there are three things that I think of Emily, and I have the delight of being the liaison for Emily's organization for SV2. But I think about governance, accountability, and transparency. And I think when you're looking overseas and you're looking at investing in other countries, figuring out what their governance model is, how they're doing their reporting, so that you can create that level of interaction about the transparency, but then having some very clear goals around that issue of accountability. So those are the three things that I always look for international giving. So thank you.
I have one more idea for you, and it's inspired by my son, and that is videos that really engage a donor on your website, really easy to access, with interviews and with drone footage of an area so that things can be seen clearly, so that it feels like you're actually on the ground. So using technology to enable people to feel like they're connected to it.
Thank you. So do we have time for, we're at the end of our time, so I think I'm going to have to wrap it up, and we'll hold that question, Jackie. Thank you. So for our panelists, as we conclude, what is your last bit of inspiration, advice, or call to action for the audience here? And recognizing it's a community of our grantees, our partners, and just our community partners. Lisa, you want to start?
Well, it's interesting because I was even thinking about the title, leaders. And I guess, I don't know, I feel like in our society we focus so much on developing leaders, which is great. But I also think that we might be doing a disservice to not be focusing more, especially on our youth, on focusing on really teaching cooperation and collaboration and working together, because I think things are really changing in terms of the effectiveness of leaders and what it's going to take to really make social change. And it's going to come, I think, from, I was just at a conference recently around, followership and not leadership. So I just challenge us to think beyond that, if you're not a leader, you're somehow less than. It's really about working together, putting egos aside, coming up with common solutions, and listening to one another, which often I think gets put behind.
Great. Fellowship. Very good. Laura.
I would just say get out of your comfort zone. Look and get yourself involved in things that are different from what you would have expected, and find people that you might not have connected with, and attach yourself, even just for a conversation, to hear about their world and the things that they think are important. And your eyes can be opened so dramatically, especially those of us who, frankly, we live in a bubble here in Silicon Valley. And it's, my kid just took a gap year and traveled all over the place. And frankly, I want to be him, because seeing the world from a bird's eye view as a rustic traveler and not having any comforts, that to me is real growth. And I feel like sometimes we sit in our bubble here, even when we're doing great work as grantees, as nonprofits, we do have a bubble. And it's really important to find places outside your comfort zone to grow.
Thank you, Laura. Ted?
I want everybody here to dream for a moment. And this is a really, really good kind of dream because you can keep your eyes open. I want everybody here to look at stage, and not at me because I'm frankly lucky to be with these three, but I'm going to take a moment to describe Lisa, Laura, and Kim. All of them are smart. They are all capable. They are all doing absolutely amazing things in the communities with their organizations, their initiatives. But now the secret sauce. All of them are actually really nice. They're actually humble. They're approachable. They're willing to share. That describes them. And that also describes many members of the SV2 community. There's really power in this network. They say the Silicon Valley is all about the network. Philanthropy is all about the network, and it's right here in this room, and I'm privileged to be part of it.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ted. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to all of you. We'll end on that high point. Thank you, Ted. Have a great evening.
That was way too sweet. That was so